So the first thing I do when I talk to families who are motivated and have a passion to do something better, not for themselves, but for their kids, I convince them that there's a chance and that there's hope and there's a path. And then I plant that little seed in their head.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast, a regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Adam Feldman, Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity of Northern Saratoga, Warren, and Washington counties in upstate New York. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding Podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. Adam, thank you very much for being on the Pro Talk Podcast, man.
Of course, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Can you tell us what you do at the Northern Saratoga, Warren, and Washington counties Habitat for Humanity?
Yeah, sure. I am the local Habitat's Executive Director. And so we're a relatively small team, so I wear lots of hats.
How many team members do you have?
We have 9 total employees. Me plus
Oh, well,
8.
that's bigger than many affiliates I've heard of.
Yeah, well, when I took on the role, I was the first employee. And so we've basically doubled in size from production and quadrupled in size from revenue.
Well, that seems like a good place to be, brother.
Indeed. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a fun ride.
You told me ahead of the show that you've been there 8 years. What did you do before that?
Yeah, so I've lived here locally for 8 years. I've been at the Habitat for about 5 years. And so I've done lots of things. I have sort of a crisscrossy, diverse background. I actually went to school for engineering. I was hoping to be an engineer, and then went to the Career Development Center at the end of my sophomore year and said, what kind of jobs can I get? And I was like, those don't sound fun. Like, what else you got for me? And I actually switched to education, and I was a middle school math teacher for 3 years. And I love teaching. I love kids. I love the opportunity to learn. I love the creativity. But I didn't particularly like the classroom. And so, like most stories of young 25-year-old men, I met a girl. She lived in New York City and convinced me to move out there. And I was like, do I teach in the city? What am I good at? And luckily, I joke around and I said I read the Wall Street Journal for a week and got a job at Lehman Brothers, an investment banker. So that, and I started from the ground up and I worked at Lehman Brothers as an investment banker for a couple of years and loved Excel spreadsheets, loved business, loved numbers, but didn't particularly like the sort of fraternity culture. And so I switched from investment banking to capital markets. So I went on the sales side and there loved the sales side of the world, the high fives, the making money, the cheering people on, the screaming on the floor, but didn't particularly love the culture because it was really just focused on making money. And at that time, not the same girl moved me to New York, but a different girl in New York. She was in law school, and I was at a big Wall Street firm. She was at a big corporate legal firm, and she had an opportunity to get transferred abroad. And I was lucky enough where I got to travel a little. And so I said, yeah, I'm here to support you. Let's do it. Cut the golden handcuffs and moved to Australia and lived down under for 2 years. And then moved back here to the States 8 years ago, started my own company called Go Kids, education program for kids, followed my passion. And from there, I actually transitioned onto the board of our local Habitat team, where we are basically volunteer run, and said, hey, do you guys want to turn this into a business and support more families and scale up? Because if so, I'm happy to transition to staff and turn this into something much bigger. And they said yes, and here we are.
And so how many homes and how long has your affiliate been in operation?
Yeah, so we've been around for 30 odd years, and we've built 32 homes. And we basically were building approximately a year, one home per year when I got started, and now we're up to 2. And we were really pondering, do we, my original vision was, let's go from 2 homes to 3 homes to 10 homes. And how do we get to 10 homes per year? And then I realized that our model is just not that great at scaling in the Northeast. Short work season, expensive property, expensive. So what else can we do? And actually over the past 2 years, I've only been committed to scaling strategies. So we sort of plateaued intentionally at 2 homes per year. And now we're looking at all scaling strategies of like, how can I build 10 homes in one fell swoop rather than grind out, and try to really scale up. And so this year we actually partnered with a private developer. We worked on some advocacy work on the political side, and we were able to secure a partnership with a developer who got a density bonus for building affordable houses. And what Habitat did was we actually we were the recruiting agent basically. And so we helped find the families to buy these affordable homes. And so we didn't lift a single hammer, and we put 6 people into affordable homes, and we got paid to do it as a consultant. So we literally flipped the model completely upside down and went from building, so basically providing opportunity for 2 people per year to this year, we're going to provide homes for 8 people.
That's fantastic, man.
Thanks.
I'm going to ask you a little bit later about partnerships between the private sector, the public sector, and not-for-profits with regard to affordable housing. So that's something I definitely want to revisit. Can you talk about the demographics and topography of your affiliates' coverage area, and who are your typical home buyers?
Yeah. So I live in Saratoga Springs, or just outside of the city. And Saratoga Springs is a beautiful place to live. Just north of us is Glens Falls, also beautiful, and just north of that is Lake George. So 3 amazingly beautiful small towns. You look up the best small towns to live on any list, and one of those 3 will be on it 100% of the time. And all 3 towns are progressive, great restaurants, great people, not much affordable housing. Mm-hmm. And then you drive 1 mile out of those cities and you're in country, farms, horses, mountains, the Adirondacks, and extremely rural. And so
extremely rural means at least a couple different things, right?
Yeah.
It's either poor rural or very affluent rural. How would you describe the rural parts outside of Saratoga Springs, for example?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah, both. So, you can, in our community, our affordable housing are mobile home parks. And so
a lot of the country, man.
Yeah. That's it. So you drive downtown Saratoga Springs. Our downtown is absolutely amazing. Small businesses, completely beautiful. That's where I'm sitting right now. I'm in a shared workspace at a little coffee shop. Almost all small businesses, amazing chamber, great support, literally small business 101. I mean, if you ever want to build a small town, you should just come to Saratoga Springs and see what it's all about. And you drive by the horse track, which is sort of what kept us on the map. We've been here for 100 plus years because of horses. Then you drive a little bit further and you have multi-million-dollar homes and all of their horses. And then you drive a mile further and you have a house that's 120 years old that hasn't been fixed, where the roof is falling in and the senior's living in, and it's a disaster. All within 5 minutes.
So does that make it harder or easier for your mission? I mean, of course you find less expensive real estate the further out you go, but that creates problems for folks getting to work and other situations, infrastructure,
Yeah, no, correct. It's a hard balance. So it's hard to get funding outside the city. It's hard. There's no infrastructure outside the city. And really most outside of the towns, there are plenty of homes. They're just 120 years old. Mm-hmm. And so they either need a new roof or a new foundation or a new HVAC system. And if you're putting in something new, you got to put in septic, you got to put in a well, and you got to cut down the trees, and it's not flat. So it's a mix.
Are most of your homes rehabs or are they new builds?
Yeah, no. I mean, when I started, we did only new builds, and we've stuck with that mainly because that's what we're good at. We always talk about let's try to do some rehabs, but we don't really have the skill set to execute that cleanly, and it's always on the to-do list, but it just hasn't happened yet.
What work of your home building is done by volunteers versus professional tradespeople, and what is the work that the pros are doing?
Yeah, so our goal is to have as much volunteer work as possible. And so on the current build we're doing in downtown Glens Falls is we paid someone to do excavation and site work, and someone to pay the foundation and to do the foundation. But besides that, until we got to HVAC, everything was done with volunteers. So all of the framing, all of the siding, the roofing, the windows, the doors, and even our electrician is a 100% volunteer team.
What about the plumbing work? That's something you need a pro for.
Oh, yeah, you definitely need a pro for a plumber. So, but we've been working with the same plumber for a while. They do both plumber and our HVAC, and they give us great pricing. So they're sort of our habitat go-to.
How did you learn about the ministry, and how did you get involved? You mentioned you were on the board first. How did you even learn about Habitat for Humanity before that?
Yeah, so earlier I mentioned that I started this company called Go Kids, and I happened to be teaching some kids and two board members, and so they were on the side. The moms were just chit chatting about Habitat, and they were like, we really need a lawyer. And I overheard them and I said, "Oh, my wife's a lawyer. Maybe she'd consider being on the board." So I brought it up to my wife, started doing some research, and she was like, "Oh, it's not really a good fit for me." And I said, "Well, do you need a business person?" They're like,
yeah,
yeah, right. And so I joined the board, and I realized very quickly that it's mind-boggling. I tell the story all the time. Our team started in a room like this. I'm sitting at a board table with 8 tables, 100% volunteers. And all of those volunteers sat around a room and said, all right, how do we build a house? How do we get the money to build a house? How do we find a family to buy that house? How do we get a mortgage to this family? How do we maintain the house? And how do we really just do it on weekends with the community? And they did that for 25 years, just 8 to 10 people sitting around a room, and they were able to build homes. I mean, it's mind-boggling how they pulled this off. It's really, and just that, the understanding that people are willing to do that and capable of doing that is just so heartwarming and so exciting. I was like, I want in, and so I got the bug. I got the habititis bug.
I can tell you, my involvement with the organization, in my early 20s. More than anything, we needed board members. So I applaud your effort for doing that. It's, at least in Pittsburgh, it was pretty easy to find on-site volunteers to build the houses, but folks who had some knowledge to run an organization, they were in short supply. That's a huge commitment.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And I was so excited about it. I decided to do it more, turn it into a job.
Can you please talk about what you see as the major barriers to home ownership in this country? And what do you think becoming a Habitat for Humanity homeowner, how does it change those people's lives?
Yeah, I'll start with a little story. This morning, literally on my way to work, my phone rings, and it's a Habitat family. And you never know what it's going to be.
It's not always good, I would add, right?
It's not always good,
Yeah.
because we're building homes, and it's inevitable that things don't always go perfect. If you're building $1 million home or $200,000 home or $100,000 home, things aren't right. But she called me to tell me that she received her stimulus check, and she went to Home Depot. Actually, she went to Curtis Lumber, our local partner, and bought her first ever washer and dryer not at a renter center. She was able to budget. She had a plan. She had enough money. She didn't feel nervous that she didn't have a plan. She was like, I have, a couple $100 extra. I needed this washer and dryer. I've been saving up, and I'm just going to use my stimulus check to do it. And I know that I'm confident that it's not going to put me in a bind because I have a budget, I have an affordable home, and I have stability. And just that little thing, she was so proud about. She just had to call and just tell me. And these are the things that I take for granted. And I bet most of your listeners just take for granted. They don't even think, oh, I need a washer and dryer, I'm going to go buy one.
Right.
This woman is 50 years old, and this is the first time she didn't need to borrow $300 to buy something. And so that's what we do. It's sustainable, it's long term. They're completely independent. She didn't call, ask for money. She didn't call and ask for help. She called me to tell me how proud she was.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, and so I probably get phone calls like that once a month. Where just a family calls me and said, another milestone, my kid went to college. They're the first person who went to college. My kid, got a job first time, things that I grew up taking for granted. And so it's, I paid off my mortgage. We've been around for 30 years. So we have families, just 7 days ago, we ripped up a mortgage. It's a 20-year mortgage. The family moved in 20 years ago, gone, no more mortgage.
That's freaking awesome, man.
Yeah,
you guys should be proud.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we provide the stability that allows people to live the American dream of home ownership and all of that and all of the dream that goes with that.
I'm
The
going to
good
go
stuff.
back to my first part of that question was like, what do you think makes it so difficult for folks of limited means to buy homes in this country?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of reasons. I think primary reason number one is down payments. And so most families, you need to put 20% down. So if you're lucky to find a home for 250,000, which really doesn't exist that much in our market, but I know it exists lots of places, that's $50,000.
Who has that?
No one, unless it got passed down from your family,
Yeah.
basically. So unless your parents paid for your school or your parents sold their house and rolled it in, nobody has $50,000. If you're making $20 an hour or less, there's zero chance you have $50,000. And so that's a big one. Two is there's no education for budgeting, what credit is. It's been removed from our schools. Actually, it was never even in our schools. So I used to be a classroom teacher, and so I was a math teacher. And during math class, nearly every one of my projects, I integrated budgeting. So if we're talking about algebra, like this, I'm turning this into a math problem, which is going to be a life problem. How do I budget? How do I save? And so it's sort of just who I am. Like I am a strong believer that if we do a good job of creating community and opportunity, people will step up and fill those shoes. And that's really what Habitat does. And so down payment, education, and then the third thing is hope. I used to be on Wall Street, and I used to, be in fixed income derivatives. I was at Lehman Brothers, part of the evil empire. I was a salesman, and so we're selling, kind of crazy things, and so that selling is sort of in my DNA. I love people. I love talking to people. I love talking about good ideas. And so now what I tell people is I sell hope. So most of the families I talk to don't even consider homeownership as a pathway
Because they just have never seen it in their families, most likely, is my guess.
Yeah, it's not part of their culture. It's not, no one's ever owned a home. In some cases, no one's ever gone to college. They understand that they're going to be living in either subsidized rent or a mobile home and living paycheck by paycheck. That's what their parents did. That's what their grandparents did. And they say, I work at the, I work at the daycare center and I make $15 an hour if they're lucky. And I'm never going to be able to save for this down payment. It doesn't even cross their path. So the first thing I do when I talk to families who are motivated and have a passion to do something better, not for themselves, but for their kids, I convince them that there's a chance and that there's hope and there's a path. And then I plant that little seed in their head. And sometimes it takes a week. Sometimes it takes a year. We've been working for a family over 3 years. They've been working on their credit, and their budget. And they are just shy of getting a mortgage. This year, we thought they were going to get it, but I still think they're about 3 months away. Mm-hmm. And so I really think, there's hard dollars, there's underlying education, and then there's a hope to actually give them a reason to be motivated. And so that's what we do. We say there is a path, and this is what it looks like.
How do your families find out about, I shouldn't say families, I should say homeowners. How do your homeowners find out about the possibility of buying their own house through Habitat for Humanity?
Yeah, so the best one is always word of mouth. So when we build a great house, their friends say, hey, we worked at the daycare. We have two families. They both worked at a daycare. And they were like, homeownership's not part of their dream, and build a house for one. And then she went to work and said, hey, come and help me build this house, because part of Habitat is sweat equity. We talked about the cash burden. So we believe in sweat equity over cash equity. That's what one of our biggest points of our business model is that
Adam, just to quickly interrupt, how many hours are your Habitat homeowners obligated to put in on the construction of homes for your affiliate?
Yeah. So we do 100 hours at the home and a total of 500 hours of community service. Mm-hmm. So we understand that some people love coming to the build site, some people don't. But Habitat really is about community. And so a lot of our families will organize community events. So they'll do, they'll get them and all of their friends and bring in some Habitat volunteers, and they'll do a Girl Scout selling cookies in the parking lot. All those hours count. It's all about community, bring people together. If you bring people together at a Habitat house, awesome. If you bring them out at something that you love, that's just as awesome. We don't judge.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, so that's what we do.
You mentioned earlier about your partnership with a for-profit developer.
Yep.
I don't know. How can Habitat for Humanity and the other affordable housing advocates and developers work with other entities, whether they are government or the for-profit sector or the not-for-profit sector? How can we get more affordable housing into the marketplace?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that we all struggle with. So in general, affordable housing is a non-economical strategy. I'm a capitalist through and through. I worked at Lehman Brothers. It's what I did. I understand money. I understand how markets work. And in our current capitalistic system, which I love and brag about all the time, affordable housing just doesn't fit. There's no home. It is, if I'm a builder and you're listening right now and you're like, oh, I can build a house and sell it for $400,000, or I can build a house for $200,000. Is it much more work to build the $400,000 house? No. It's the same amount of work. And so, of course, I'm going to, it's just natural. Like, why would I build a $200,000 house if I can put in an extra 5 minutes of work and build a $400,000 house and make double my money? That's what capitalism is. That's exactly what we do. And so there needs to be some sort of catalyst to make the market work better for affordable housing, because we do know that affordable housing drives the entire community. And so you'll see a lot of communities don't even say the word affordable housing anymore, because it sort of has people have a tendency to jump to projects.
Yeah, there's a negative connotation associated with that term. It means like huge public housing developments, right, in people's minds.
Correct. It scares people away, and so you'll see a lot of people say workforce housing. So it's like, you go to the coffee shop and you talk to the barista every day, and you're probably friends with them, and they probably know more about you than your wife does. But where the hell do they live? Yeah. Do you want them to live somewhere? You drop your kid off at school. Where do you think your kindergartner teacher lives? That police officer who helped you, where does he live? You need all of these people in your community to make a great community, and you don't want them driving an hour away, or you're going to lose talent, you're going to lose skills, and your community eventually is going to fail. So we need a catalyst to create affordable housing. And the tool we used was called Inclusionary Zoning. So you take a developer, and it's ironic because most people are like, oh, you work for Habitat, you must hate developers. And I'm like, no, the opposite. I love developers. It's a supply and demand thing. More supply, build. So all you builders out there, keep building. Don't let the fear of the community saying, oh, not another condo, not another this, scare you away. Keep building, because what happens is my parents live in a single family residence and they're ready to downsize. So they're going to sell their house and move into the condo that you're building in downtown. And then a middle-class family who's growing and has lived in a 2-bedroom and now has 3 kids, they're going to buy my parents' house. And then you just opened up a 2-bedroom, at a more of affordable price. And then you have, a lower income family who's working their tails off, making $15 an hour, and they finally saved enough to have a down payment, and then they buy that house. And so there's a real, I'm not a big fan of trickle-down economics, but there is trickle-down housing. So keep building it. So that's one. And then 2 is what we did is a builder was able to build condos, and this current zoning in the city was for about 40 units. And so he went to the city and said, I'd like to build 60. And with a little help and a little push from Habitat, a little advocacy work on the political side, we said, hey, you should let them build 60, but just make 10 of them affordable. And so the builder gets 50 market rate, and they're still going to make some money on the affordable, just not as much. And we will partner with that builder, and we will find home buyers for those extra homes. And we will do all of the hard work that the builder's not good at, but we happen to be quite great at. Yeah. I just use that example as 40-10-10. Our project was actually 6 affordable homes. And so we found those 6 families. We helped them find mortgages with lower interest rates. We helped them find down payment assistance programs. We helped them do credit repair. We helped them work through collections if any of them went through collections, and got them all mortgage ready. We helped them find attorneys that did things at half price. And so we did all the things that Habitat is great at, and did it efficiently, and didn't have to lift a single hammer.
Do you see that model being applied at other Habitat for Humanities throughout the country?
Yeah, I've already I made that entire sales pitch to the affiliates through what Habitat does. They have statewide organizations, and so Habitat of New York State organized an opportunity for me to talk to all of the Habitat teams in New York State and also New Jersey, and basically gave them an overview of that strategy and strongly encouraged them to follow the same tool. Habitat does a lot somewhat recently, and I wish we had done it earlier, but now we put a lot of effort into our advocacy efforts, both local, state, and national. And at the national convention in Washington, D.C. last February, I also had an opportunity to do a little brief presentation on that, and got a standing applause. And from that, I had a few affiliate leaders from around the country, and I did one-on-ones about what the contract looked like, what it did, how we made it work. But the simple version is, I tell this riddle when I usually do my Habitats talks is, what costs $200,000 to build sells for $100,000, and everyone assumes is free, and it's a Habitat home. And so in short, every time we build a home, we have to raise $100,000 somehow, somewhere. And it's a lot of it's done with volunteer labor. But that doesn't cover that $100,000 gap. We got to raise a lot of money. Raising money is slow. It's hard,
especially now, right?
Especially now. It's just hard. And in this case, the builder built the homes. We did all the things we were great at. We got business for our local bankers. They get all of the community support credits that they get. And we actually got paid to put people in affordable housing. So we literally completely flipped the model completely upside down. So we generated revenue and supported 6 additional people when we usually only support 2 directly per year.
That's fantastic, man.
Thanks.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much to Adam Feldman for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Adam Feldman, thank you very much. And thank you all for listening. Please stay safe and happy building. Tune in next week for the second half of this 2-part interview.